We have Deb Conrad, who the former CMO of Intel at West as the CMO in residence and now recovering from leg injury. Alexander Morehouse, CMO of Banner Health, and previous to that, Kaiser. And Chris Curtin from Visa. So we have a powerhouse here, group of people who represent not just the customer, as you had in the breakout earlier with Quentin, but also the C-level decision-making group. A group that, how many of you raise your hand if you believe you sell to the CMO? So about 30% or so of you. My first question actually to all of you has to do with that. A lot of people believe that you guys make the decisions when it comes to MarTech and AdTech. Do you? Do you actually look at these solutions that your agencies and folks who work for you bring to you and make decisions and say yes or no? Do they cross your desk and you strike them out with a red pen?
I'll give it a shot. First, I need to shout out to Becky Brown, who actually really was the decision maker. She's still at Intel and runs all of digital media, and so she's the person that truly made the decisions. I think it was more of a question in time, and even just hearing Melanie just now talk about the P&G journey, there was a moment in time when we realized that we needed to get our act together on digital and mobile. And at that point, I realized that I could either be a gate or an enabler. And I think at that point, we really started, and I started making a point of really understanding the space and getting a lot more, I don't know, familiar with the terminology, although I will say I will never get familiar with it in general, but that just getting used to the concepts and getting used to the terminology. And so spending an extra amount of time, not just myself, but my staff, even my peers, asking the organization. We had a thing we called Digital IQ, where we just said to a couple thousand people, everyone needs to get really smart on this. And so at that point in time, I think I probably was making a lot of the decisions that over time I felt less and less anxious about making and more comfortable because I understood it. But I would also say that, you know, I relied heavily on the agencies and on people like Becky, and she brought in some great experts too.
Alexandra, do you make decisions directly about the technology vendors you use in marketing?
It depends on how you define directly. So I don't have my vendors or I don't have my agencies do any of the work with the vendors, but in about a month, actually in about 3 weeks, I'll sit down with my board with the annual budget, and the CIO and I together will sit down and say, here are the things we need and why. And then it becomes a horse trading back and forth. So I'm the one who's evaluating them, but it actually has to fit in with a larger landscape, which is even larger than Lumascape because it's integrated with I have all the call centers as well too, so everything has to fit in, but I do it myself.
Chris?
I mean, I don't make the decisions, but I'm responsible for the decisions, which is kind of the worst of both worlds. So
if they don't work, it's your fault.
Oh, of course. I mean, that's easy. But you know, so how do you deal with that? The way I attempt to deal with it is kind of set up a framework by which, you know, we determine outcomes that we're looking for, and if things ladder up against those outcomes, then those are generally things that, you know, I can support, and then you just try to do what you can to sit back and say, okay, against a quarter or against an initiative, what would be signs that this thing was working or not working, such that you can evaluate it along the way. But we just went and changed our media buying and planning roster, and we went completely, you know, I don't know, ad tech, I guess. We went programmatic with a boutique named Essence and others, and we obviously have a relationship with Social Code, and but I think it's really about outcomes, and then just trying to make sure that people kind of are working against those outcomes and they can be evaluated.
So let me ask a specific question of all of you. Cast back to the last year or so of the work that you've done and give us an example of a new technology-based marketing product that you brought in that was awesome, that like you loved, and why? And if you guys can't answer that question, we have a problem.
So for us, I'll just answer for Visa. We've gone from one form factor, which is the plastic credit card. In fact, Visa is a network, and it enables all form factors to 4, 5, 6 form factors on your physical being. You could be, right now I've got four Visas in and around me. I've got it on my watch, I've got it on my phone, I've got it in my vehicle. Actually, I could do order ahead with certain merchants. I've got it in the form factor of the credit card. And what we're effectively trying to do is coordinate all of those touch points and with and through geolocation, and then ultimately add services and benefits to it. So if you go to SFO and you're going abroad, we're going to send you a message that says, do you want to be immediately enabled when you land in Brazil to be able to use your Visa product? And so for us, a lot of the marketing, if you will, has been more maturely laid out against the product and the experiences, not just the advertising. And I know it sounds like trite and jargon, but we're a company that for close to 5 decades, you put a big megaphone out there with the Olympics, put a big megaphone out there with the NFL and with World Cup, and just said Visa. And I think now what we're trying to do is define Visa in your everyday life in a way that is expanding exponentially with every year.
Were there products or vendors that helped along the way that you could specify?
Well, for me, we had to shift our entire media buying and planning landscape to both fund and also architect the world that I just described. And we went solely programmatic about putting the right message before the right person at the right time, with the hope that that message actually felt less like advertising and more like a feature or benefit of having a relationship with Visa.
Mm-hmm. Other view? Something in the last year that's
blown you away? It's more or less a space more than a specific thing. I've spent the last year working with CEOs and founders and startups and helping operationalize their marketing. And something that I had to spend a little bit more time than I had in my Intel tenure is just growth hacking. And just that whole space is largely because that wasn't really something in Intel's business that we needed to pay that much attention to, but it just in the last year has just become so important and so critical. So just that space in general has become something I've become quite intrigued with. And also an eternal quest, and I would say this to anybody who has a solution but who can also help solve these problems. Anything that I could use as a dashboard that would just, like that Lumascape stuff, just try to make some sense out of it, that I could look at it on any given day and make some sense out of it. I'm always intrigued with that as a solution, because that's always a problem space, is how do I actually understand all the different metrics? And I want to be metrics oriented and measurement oriented and use analytics in a way that you can action off of them. But the dashboard world is something that I think is especially for me or for people that are making decisions and using different tools and trying to aggregate them together. So if anybody could please solve that problem, that would be really awesome.
Do you want us to name names?
Yeah, please
okay,
do.
So for
please name some names.
So a huge breakthrough for me was a tool called Reputation.com. Is anyone in here from Reputation? Okay, good. I can speak unimpeded. So if you have 17,000 doctors and 500 different clinics, hospitals, X-rays, labs, pharmacies, trying to manage the reputation, ratings, and reviews on all of them is a big, big deal. And especially if doctors themselves are not super happy about being reviewed in the first place. So having a tool like that allows you across time and across geographies to be able to stay on top of it and respond, it was just made my life hugely easier. Another tool that's helped a lot is one called Percolate. Is anyone from Percolate in here? Okay, good. Okay, I can freedom to speak. Again, if you're dealing with a Lumascape, a big headache in air traffic control is how to create once and publish many times. And the trafficking and the scheduling of that, especially if you have multiple partners and you have a business that's in many states and you have multiple agencies, to be able to have mission control so that everyone's literally seeing the same thing, and you can publish across your digital, social, and mobile venues at the same time and be able to track and get the feeds. The platform has grown a little bit since then, but it also has the analytic tools that plug into it. So you're not only pushing it out, but you're getting your metrics in, and it helps.
I'm going to ask the reverse of this question, and Deb, you already sort of intonated what you might answer, but maybe you can go into some more detail or find yet another challenge, which is, what are you disappointed in the digital marketing landscape? What's your greatest challenge or frustration? Chris?
Oh, I mean, I would go exactly where Deborah was going. We have a CEO who could care less about the advertising metrics. I mean, although it's ironic because our brand's been going up, and he said, Chris, how am I supposed to judge the brand going from 7 to 5 in one category and from 34 to 28 in another category? I mean, it seems like
34 to 28 on what scale? Forgive me for not
well,
knowing.
I mean, we were just doing one in payments category, one in kind of new entrants like Apple and Samsung in another category, and he's like, it just seems like vanity metrics and all the rest. And I said, Charlie, when the brand is going down in the rankings, you take it very seriously. When the brand's going up in the rankings, it's phantom math. But I mean, the core of it is, to Deb's point, is like, he honestly, which I think he's right on, is he could care less about the advertising dashboard in the sense of ad recall, pages viewed, cut through, these types of advertising or marketing metrics. What he does care about is the business outcome. And I think he, though never explicitly saying it, I think he would actually accept correlation over causation if we could tie it and anchor it to a business outcome. So if payment volume went up, if more payment was occurring with and through Visa during any course of a year, and we could tie it back to activities or investments or initiatives that we've spearheaded, even if it was correlated, I think that he would be far happier than if we said, look, we did a big thing on Cyber Monday and we had 28 million views. It's okay, you had 28 million views. So we're moving as a company one metric from brand awareness to brand preference, and we're trying to connect brand preference to business outcomes. And that's the kind of leap we're trying to do.
Do you find that you have the tools to do that, or do you need?
No, I need the tools. I mean, I need thought leadership, and I need a partner or partners who can come in there and say, here's how you can best connect these dots to a place of not certainty but probability.
Mm-hmm. Challenges, Alexander?
Challenges, well, you and I have talked about this, and I think Eric Stein is out in the audience as well, too. So dumpster diving, that's my biggest problem.
Elaborate?
Say more. Data. So where I sit, I've got this huge reservoir. I have all the call centers, so 50 million calls that come in every year. And then I have all of my web transactions, all my social and mobile transactions, and then I have medical records. None of them talk to each other. And I can't string together exactly what you're talking about, because going from brand awareness to actually brand engagement, I can't say from A to B to C. You're having this transaction which drives that activity, which actually drives that, in my case, health outcome, or better health outcome for you. So being able to onboard all of the data, get the hygiene and standardization, and get it in the first place, and then push it back out. And I love, with all respect to the folks who have marketing clouds, it's this part of the data that we're looking at. The marketing cloud is typically just the digital part, and it doesn't even look at your customer data. It doesn't look anything at your call center data. But we're living, and it was what Melanie was saying, if we're really going to be delivering a better experience to some poor person who just is saying, I'm bringing you my business, please know who I am, it's really hard to track that down and actually use it.
Just to add to the dashboard one, and very similar experience with these guys, I think, and this might just be a personal thing too, I'm always looking for insights. And so I love data, I love the analytics, but those to me are like the golden nuggets, but that I want the jewelry. I want the finished insight that really helps me make a decision or helps me just place a bet. Just again, talk about Melanie again, the feminine care products and the insights of, I know what women might want, or I know where young girls want, where they're really struggling. And being able to use that insight to work back into product development and campaign planning, and where we ultimately will spend our money and place bets. I think those insights for me, that's always kind of the gold, I was gonna say the brass ring, but the gold ring that I think are hard to get to. So anything that we can do with the data and the analytics that get us to insights faster. And insights, a lot of times, it's just a gut feel. It's just really intuition in some cases. So it's not like there's some tool that's going to spit out an insight, but getting to that insight faster and having it be more relevant and more accurate is always something that I strive for.
You mentioned Marketing Cloud. I'm curious, have any or all of you picked a winner and decided to go deep with either of the sort of big 3 or 4 who seem to be, constructing out of, mostly acquired parts, a Marketing Cloud solution? No?
I have the requirements written for an RFP, but we'll choose in the first quarter.
And I left Intel about a year and a half ago, but at that point, no.
Yeah.
Just all
So
the
do you think the
parts.
jury's out on that? Is that something that you want? Do you want to have a relationship with one vendor so that you don't have to think about 50 different point solutions across, all your different agencies? I mean, do large enterprises crave partnerships with large enterprises? Percolate is a startup, for example. Yeah.
I mean, I'd prefer some version of the startup because I honestly, I think part of it is just a mind melt with, entrepreneurial thinking and like the discussions before, we're trying to be an ageless brand, and by being ageless, we have to actually be mindful of hitting younger generations. My belief is that brands age up naturally; they don't age down naturally, and you have to take affirmative action to make sure that they speak to every generation. And so, where people, of the 20-year-olds can view Visa with the same appeal and the same demand and attractiveness that they may now think of Venmo or Alipay one day. And so, for us, we affirmatively moved from Foster City to San Francisco. We wanted to get in the heart of tech. We didn't, and that feeling, we didn't want to be a bystander to it. And I would prefer to deal with some of the scrappier, more entrepreneurial tech shops.
Yeah.
I'd certainly just reiterate the same thing. The integration has to happen somewhere. And so I think we would put, again, Becky can update my perspective on this, but we put extra energy into finding ways to do the integration and a lot of that gluing of things together on our own versus looking for one big guy to do it. I think, to Chris's point, at this point in the maturity of ad tech and a lot of the solutions that are out there, it's great to be working with entrepreneurs who are really trying to solve a problem, and they really are looking you in the eye saying, how can I help you solve your problem? Right. And yeah, I mean, that would be my preference at this point versus one of the big guys.
Let me follow that up, and I think this might be our ultimate question because we only have a minute left here. But in digital marketing, specifically in as it relates to channel to a customer, they're really, and ad tech stack, there really now are, there's sort of a duopoly. There's Google and there's Facebook. Do you think this is a good thing and it makes your lives easier, better, or are you concerned about that fact?
It makes my life a lot easier, actually.
Chris, Deb?
I mean, I'm schizophrenic on that point. Do we have Google, Facebook people here? Probably tons of them.
Yep, I imagine so.
I think in one instance it's great because we're partners with them, and I think we have some preferred marketing status, particularly with Facebook, and we're obviously partners with Google on Android Pay and things like that. On the other hand, I honestly crave the less salesmanship and more partnership. And I know that, what does that mean? So what does that mean? It means thinking through different outcomes that Visa is trying to arrive at in the most efficient and effective way possible, and getting someone across the table who's going to sit back and have brilliant breakthrough ideas that you hadn't thought about, that advance the thinking, that create a marketplace of interesting concepts that we can consider, not things that we necessarily buy. And I'm sure that will shake out, but I think we need a little bit less kind of sales teams and a little bit more, why aren't you guys thinking about A, B, C, and D?
Right, got it.
I would just say I like that there's two, because I like the fact that they
Yeah.
will play off of each other or have to compete, and that competition is good for everybody.
Yeah.
But I also think Chris said it, in an extremely articulate way, that it really is about how do we help solve problems and not just be, yet
Sell
another.
the solution they've got.
Yeah,
Yep.
just cookie cutter solution.
And there actually are three. Twitter's not dead yet. And pricing now, for me, it's great. Pricing on Twitter is hugely advantageous, and they are being very proactive in terms of suggesting solutions. So it's been great. The competition between those three, or Twitter between those two, has been, at least this season, has been very helpful.
It's good to hear. Well,
I'd totally echo that. I think the hungrier, Adam Bain is second to none in this respect, but I think the hungrier these platforms are, the better, and the better the ideas and the better the fit. So I completely agree with you.
right on. Well, we could probably talk for an hour, but we're not allowed to. So we're getting the yank. So please join me in thanking these three CMOs.